Hi, I'm James Wettermark. I've been practicing railroad law for, 38 years now. And one of the most common inquiries I receive from my friends who work for the railroad is when the railroad imposes some discipline on them or treats them unfairly. They always call and say, can they do that? Is there anything I can do about it? Well, a lot of times the answer is yes, they can do that. But a lot of times the answer is no, there's something we can do about it. And so I wanted to talk to you about one of the tools that we as lawyers have that can help protect you against unfair discipline on the railroad. Congress passed a law called the Federal Rail Safety Act. We call it FRSA for short. And as part of that law, they passed what we call the whistleblower protections. You see, the railroads were doing so many terribly unfair things to their employees that Congress stepped in and passed this law to try to put a stop to some of the misdeeds the railroads were doing. So here's what this law does. It says that if you're a railroad employee, there are certain activities that you do in your job that are protected. And if you engage in a protected activity and then the railroad retaliates against you, disciplines you, then you've got a darn fine lawsuit against them. So, what are the protected activities? Well, number one is if you report a personal injury, you're out there on the job, you get hurt, you fill out the accident report, boom, you have just engaged in a protected activity. And if the railroad retaliates against you for that, then you've got a good case. Another protected activity is if you cooperate with the FRA in an investigation, or if you report an unsafe condition to the FRA or to the railroad. Those are protected activities, and if they retaliate against you after doing these activities, you have protection. Another very important protected activity is if you are off work following the treatment plan of a doctor for an on-the-job injury, then that's considered protected activity. So if you're off work because a doctor told you to as a result of an on-the-job injury and the railroad tries to retaliate against you, then you have a case under the FRSA. So how does this work? Let me give you an example because most people do best by example. Let's say John Smith is out there and he lines a railroad switch and it freezes up in the middle of the alignment. He hurts his back. So he fills out an accident report. And the next thing you know, he's been charged with all these rule violations with regard to throwing the switch. Well, what the law says is this. It says if you prove you engaged in the protected activity, you did. If you prove that the railroad retaliated against you, they're going to, then you have proved everything you need to prove your case. The burden shifts to the railroad then. The railroad's got to prove that the reason they're disciplining you is unrelated to the injury you reported. Well, you know as well as I do that 99% of the time when someone gets hurt, they come up with these bogus charges. They say, oh, you exerted too much force, or come up with some other bogus rule to charge you with. Well, let me tell you, if they do that, then you're going to have a darn fine whistleblower case against them. And let me tell you what this law lets you do. It says that if they do this, you're entitled to recover all of your back pay. You're entitled to get reinstatement to the railroad. You're entitled to recover damages for the emotional distress that you and your family went through while you were off work. You're entitled to recover punitive damages up to $250,000. And most important, this is my favorite part, the railroad's going to have to pay my attorney fees, and I'm not cheap. But anyway, it's a really powerful law, and it's something that you ought to have in the front of your mind whenever you're facing discipline. Like all laws, it's complicated. You've seen those ads on TV where they say, don't try this at home. This is done by professionals. Well, that's the same thing we're dealing with here. So if you're in a situation where you think that the railroad is retaliating against you for doing one of these protected activities, give me a call. I'll talk you through it. We'll see if we can't put together a case where we can make the railroad pay for what they're doing to you. Again, give me a call anytime you'd like to. Thanks.